Hello everyone. So yeah, I am here and I'm going to be talking about me. And let's look back. Fresh-faced picture of me in primary school. In the queue. And I say, I was just an ordinary kid. And then I went to high school, for example, I did cross-country running, county level, did athletics as well, set my school's under 15 400 metre record, which to this day still stands. Played football for various teams, including Walsall Football Club at one point. I played rugby, basketball, cricket, all sorts. And I put this photo up of the amazing kit we had to wear. Beautiful. I was also a drummer in a local band and studying hard at school with the ambition of becoming a doctor. There's me in a good old biology lesson. And like I say, I was a normal teenager. Here's me at a music festival. I'm the guy in green. And I was feeling pretty content with my life. But then, dun. Like many of yourselves, I then got diagnosed with cancer. So after 6 months of crippling symptoms, misdiagnosed, I underwent emergency surgery to give me a cool 21cm scar down my stomach. I then underwent 6 months of chemotherapy, which made me sick and tired and all sorts. But then I was in remission. Woo. However, that was short-lived and I found a lump on the back of my leg. And then I underwent more surgery, some more cool scars, chicks dig scars, so that's okay. And then 30 sessions of radiotherapy. And then again, they thought I was in remission. But again, it was short-lived and a lump returned in my knee. I then underwent more chemotherapy, which made me even more sick and tired. And it was this point I had some scan results. And the scan results showed that despite the treatment, the tumours continued to grow. It was at this point they were discussing amputating my left leg, so just chopping it off. But before we had a chance to do that, my cancer had spread elsewhere. I've since had more cancer in my groin, pelvis, back of my calf, and since underwent more surgery, chemo, surgery, and more surgery, and we'll be starting chemo again in a couple of weeks. So, briefly put, that's my not so brief medical history. And like yourselves, I've been through a lot these last couple of years, but more significantly, I've learnt a lot. And not least, I've learned to kind of overcome the situation I found myself in. Thank you. This photo was took 1 week after the original operation to remove the first tumours from my bowel. I was out of hospital for 1 day. The doctor let me go back home over the weekend and said, take it easy, stay at home, don't do much. But there was a fancy dress party I really wanted to go to. And I said I was a normal teenager, so I did. Originally I was going to wear the green morse suit you saw earlier, but from the surgery I was hunched over, I couldn't walk, so I went as a granny, just in a wheelchair. And because of how pale I was, because of how thin I was, I thought I was pretty convincing. And by the end of the night I was being pushed around in the front of a conga line in my wheelchair. And I had a great time. And this was a statement I made straight from the off of how I was going to tackle my illness. I was going to go out there and kind of defy the odds, I guess. I was first diagnosed at the beginning of year 11. So I was going into my final year of GCSEs. And the doctor told me, you're going to have all this treatment, you're still recovering from surgery, you know, take a year out of school, concentrate on your health and come back to your studies. I said no, because like I said earlier, I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to become a doctor, and I didn't want cancer to get in the way. At the end of the year, I got 5 A stars, 4 A's, and 2 distinctions. Yeah, the point of this is not to try and make you all superhuman educational nerds, but the point is that I had a goal. And I didn't let cancer get in the way. I achieved what I did by working hard, and I got there kind of despite of cancer and perhaps in spite of it. And then again, in year 12, when I relapsed, it would have been very easy for me not to continue my studies. I ended up getting an A star in A-level mathematics a year early, A in AS physics, biology, chemistry, and an A in AS psychology. And again, I did it by hard work. It was challenging, but it was worth it in the end. And life would be boring if it wasn't challenging. And throughout, I've also learned not to take my friends and family for granted, because you never know when you might need them. I always stress I'm only as strong as the people around me. And I'm doing all right now, so they must be pretty good as well. But yeah, the relationship you have with friends and family, it's one thing that I've found really difficult in cancer. When someone says what's it like to have cancer, they put themselves in the position of the patient, they think, oh, the treatment, the emotional toll, it must be terrible. Yes, it is, we've all been through it, but to a certain extent, I felt that was the burden on me. I could deal with that, because it was to do with me. What I didn't like was the kind of stress it put on your relationship with your family, your friends. I felt by having cancer, automatically, like I was a bad son, a bad friend. And it's kind of like an irrational burden, but it's what I felt. So everything I'm doing now, keeping positive, I hope kind of lessens that burden a bit on them. And generally, I've just learned to be as positive as possible. And like James well said in the first speech earlier, I also treat cancer a bit like sport. I wouldn't go into a football game thinking I'm going to lose. I wouldn't go into a race thinking I'm going to lose. So why would I go into a battle against cancer thinking you're going to lose? And in fact, why would you go into life every day with that attitude? I've always found, even if you have to fake sometimes, a positive attitude links to better outcomes. And I've also learned not to feel sorry for myself, so you guys shouldn't feel sorry for me either. However, it has got to a point where my disease has been described as incurable by the doctors. I do not know how long I've got left to live. But one of the reasons for that is because I haven't asked, because I don't see the point in measuring life in terms of time anymore. I would much rather measure it in terms of what I achieve, which I think is a much more valid and pragmatic measure. So I'm just trying to achieve as much as possible in the near future. One of the things I'm trying to achieve is to raise as much money as possible for this wonderful charity here, the Teenage Cancer Trust. So me, myself, I was treated in a specialist young persons unit, which is fab. Games consoles, there's a drum kit in the back of the ward, so when I was feeling a little bit down from chemotherapy, physically having something like a drum kit there I could play on, psychologically that was a huge boost. And look, stuff like Wi-Fi, whoever put Wi-Fi in a hospital for teenagers was actually a genius, because who would have thought? Yeah, even though I couldn't be with my friends in person, being able to just have some kind of interaction with them. Some of the times it literally just was a be right back, being sick, LOL. But it was some kind of interaction, and you know, to me, that was really, really helpful. As well, I've also met other cancer patients, so these are my cancer friends. We were going to go with the term eggheads, but we thought that might be a bit controversial. Yeah, as I say, these are my cancer friends, and they are brilliant. And some of you might have your own cancer friends, and if not, by the end of this weekend, I guarantee you probably will. And it's kind of weird how from one common thing, we've just formed this invaluable support network, and we get on really, really well. And then, of course, another thing Teenage Cancer Trust does is fund this conference. This was me at the one, I think 2 years ago, Olympic-themed fancy dress party. It's good fun. And this conference was actually the turning point for me of how I view basically everything. And I remember two standout events, and both of them were at the parties. The first was, does everyone remember the song I Whip My Hair Back and Forth by Willow Smith? Yeah, good, because I'm not going to sing it, but basically the lyrics go, I whip my hair back and forth, I whip my hair back and forth. So you would have thought, if you played this to a room full of cancer patients, because chemotherapy or treatment for cancer makes you lose your hair, they might be quite offended. Nah. I say that, I think it's 2 years ago, they played this song at the disco, and it was beautiful. You had a room full of cancer patients, ironically whipping their baldness, whipping their wigs, whipping what's left of their hair, back and forth, and it was absolutely wonderful. And then the second thing I saw, again at disco, this guy started messing with his leg, and he was doing it for a while. He was like, what's he doing? Next thing you know, he whips off a false prosthetic leg, starts waving about in the air, dancing about, having the time of his life. And again, that was absolutely beautiful, because it showed me that we might be young people with cancer, but cancer doesn't have to have us. It's not the cancer that defines who we are, it's how we react to it. You know, bad things happen, and it's probably unfair, but to a certain extent, it's already happened. The only thing we can change is how we react to it from that point. So I'm personally just trying to react in the best way possible. At the beginning of the year, I made a page called Stephen's Story, and on this page I included a bucket list, so a wish list of 46 things I'd like to achieve in the near future. One of these things, for example, was to meet Jimmy Carr, so there's me and my best buddy there. Another thing was to set a world record, so there's me in a 10th of the world's longest continuous group drum roll, which was over 30 hours, and it was shattering. Another thing was to go to Wembley. While I was there, I also got to meet Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard and Theo Walcott, which was pretty cool. Another thing was to have my portrait drew. The one on whichever side, I don't know, but from the Asian fella, that was delivered all the way from Thailand. Someone found my bucket list, and off a picture of a phone, he drew that, sent it all the way back to me in Burntwood, where I live, which I thought was amazing. And I think it was about a week ago now, I was a subject for another drawing which was being donated to Macmillan, and it was being sold at an auction. The starting bid was £4 grand. A picture of my face, I wasn't even pouting. Another thing on the bucket list was to host a Come Dine with Steve dinner party, which went down there well. Another thing was to crowd surf in a rubber dinghy, so I did that when... It was awesome, I'm just going to say. I did that when Cancer Bats were playing, ironically, at Slam Dunk Festival. Oh, and it's brilliant. Another thing was to do some public speaking. I ended up doing that in lots of places, including Downing Street. So there's me doing a classic Downing Street pose. And another thing was to organise a flash mob. So for those of you who don't know what a flash mob is, it's organised chaos in a public place. So a group of people who have organised something will turn up to a place and they'll all sing a song or do a dance. So if you're not part of a flash mob, you don't have a clue what's going on. For mine, we called it a laugh mob. So on April Fool's Day, me and about 100 friends just walked into the Birmingham Bullring Shopping Centre and started laughing. And that's it. We started at 12, finished at 12:05, and it was fantastic. Literally, the general public, some of them joined in, which was a good laugh. Others didn't have a clue what was going on, asking what the joke is. At one point, security tried to move us, so we laughed at them. It was fab, and it was just, yeah, really, really fun event. It was covered on ITV News website, Guardian, and the point is, it's like, life can be a big joke. You know, learn to laugh things and not take things too seriously. Another thing on the bucket list was the skydive. So there's me jumping 15,000 feet out of a plane, which I've done twice now, which is pretty cool. And the next thing was to get a tattoo. Does everyone remember the troll dolls with the kind of funky hair? I've got one of them underneath my armpit, with my armpit hair doubling up as a troll doll's hair. Which I thought was quite creative. Well, about a month ago I got another tattoo, and as mentioned earlier, I had lots of surgery, so I got scars from surgery. And from the one scar, I've now got a dotted line and a pair of scissors. Like so. And but yeah, seriously speaking, it reminds me not to take things too seriously. And it's a way of turning every negative into a positive, which is what life's all about. And the final thing I'm going to talk about in the bucket list was to drum in front of a huge crowd. I ended up doing this in front of 90,000 people live at Wembley and a TV audience of approximately 200 million, which is pretty huge. It was for the UEFA Champions League final, Bayern Munich versus Borussia Dortmund. Just before kick-off, I was part of the opening ceremony, one of 400 music performers, and it was an awesome experience. And I've had loads of awesome experience. Literally, the slides could go on, but I've only got 20 minutes to talk. But yeah, the point is this, I've had all these awesome experiences, and it was only January the 7th I made this page, beginning of this year. So since the beginning of the year, I've done all of this. And in a way, it's a shame, because I've had to wait on tragedy, i.e. an incurable diagnosis, to remind me to have a good time. But it shouldn't be like that. You know, if you want to go jump out of a plane, go do it. If you want to organise a flash mob, go do it. Don't be afraid to try something new. Life is for living. I've got this quote up on the board. It's quite a long one, so I'll explain it. But the quote says, if you had £86,400 in a bank account, and this money was put in every day, but at the end of that day, the bank account carried no overdraft, so that money disappeared, you'd take that money out, wouldn't you? You'd spend it on a nice car, you'd give it to someone else, you'd just take it out and store it. You wouldn't let all this money disappear. Well, you do have this bank account. It's not money, but it's time. Each of you are given 86,400 seconds every day to do whatever you want with it. And you know, at the end of the day, at the end of that 24 hours, you're not getting that time back. So that's what I think is important, to try and use it as positively as possible. The first thing on my bucket list was to raise £10,000 for the Teenage Cancer Trust. That was achieved in about a month. And then the next goal, we upped that target to £50,000. That was since achieved. As you can see on there, the new goal was £100,000. But that actually is updating, and the current total stands at about £110,000 raised for the Teenage Cancer. You know, it's been fun actually. I always stress there's got to be some fun in fundraising and organised events. It's a good little release for me. And in recognition of this, for example, I've won parliamentary awards. And someone said to me the other day, Pride of Britain Awards, don't know watch it. Like, they said to me, oh, you should be on Pride of Britain. But I just said to him, I couldn't care less. Because I don't do what I do for awards. I do it because I enjoy it. What I found is the best way to help yourself is to help other people. You know, fundraising is one level of doing it. But you know, if you've got someone in your group this weekend who hasn't got the best kind of social skills or stage, you know, talk to them, get to know one. If you've got a friend on Facebook who's put a sad status, pop up, say how they're doing. Best way to help yourself is to help others, because it feels good. And to help others, I've also been kind of blogging my journeys in all kinds of places. So there's me in local newspapers. I've also been talking to people like this, a bit of deja vu there. I've also been putting my story on Facebook, over 10,000 likes now, and some weeks reached over 500,000 people, which is just crazy statistics. Last week, so exactly 7 days ago, I was a United Kingdom trend on Twitter. Looking forward. So for half an hour, I was one of the most talked about things on Twitter. I luckily looked at the statistics. JLS were only trending for 5 minutes that night. So I conclude I am trendier than JLS. And I've also been on national radio, Radio 5 Live, talking about my experiences. And generally I've been telling a lot of people. And one question I get, a question a lot of people ask is, what is it like having cancer? And that's a really, really big question. Well, actually on a radio with a guy, and he gave me the most brilliant analogy ever. The analogy was about his terminal illness. But I see cancer as like this. It's like having a gun on the back of your head, you know, a nice little magnum or something, you know, and it's there. You don't know who's on the end of a gun, but you know it's a gun, because guns are guns. And it's there, and you wait a bit, and it's still there, and you wait a bit, and it gets a bit annoying. You know, you're going to need the loo or something, you're going to need to get something to eat, there's someone on Sky telly at home, but that gun's still there, and it's scary. And if you look into it, it can eat you up. But what I do is try and use it as a motivation to look forward, to keep on going. It scares me to enjoy life as much as possible. I am not dying from my cancer. I am not suffering from my cancer. I am purely just living with it. Basically, why do I share my story? And the reason is this. It's because I actually see my first cancer diagnosis as a good thing. You know, it was a huge kick up the backside. It taught me not to take anything for granted and gave me a lot of motivation for life. Unfortunately, my later diagnosis means I might not have much time left. So I'm stuck in this position with loads and loads of motivation, but potentially not very much time. Well, you guys can't give me your time to make me live longer. But if you haven't got the motivation, what I can try and do is to try and give you a bit of my motivation, you know, to try and achieve something, to help others, and to just enjoy life as much as possible. So, thank you for listening, and if you haven't already, remember to check out my Facebook page.